Hello, and welcome to the Inevitable You podcast. This is Brian Hemmer. Happy New Year. I hope your 2023 is off to an amazing start. And I'm really excited about this episode. We've got some new content. I'll be interviewing our great friend Walter Goodwin, whose wisdom I really appreciate. He comes with over 30 years of experience with Tibetan Buddhist practices and meditation. And he's made it his life purpose to translate all of this knowledge into more of Western world language and lifestyles to help people find more meaning, fulfillment, joy, and appreciation in their lives. So not only do I have a personal interest in learning more about these concepts, but I believe that it integrates really well with all the concepts and tools that we teach here at the Inevitable You. And it provides another framework and model for people to go about improving their own lives and evolving and upgrading their consciousness. So this will be the first in a series of interviews that I'll be doing with Walter. And in this one, we go a little bit into his background, why he started his system, the Iron Bird Dharma, and his approach to introducing Tibetan Buddhism practices to the Western mind, and some of the core tenets of his practice for evolving consciousness, like perceiving reality as energy, frequency, and vibration. So it's a very fascinating discussion. It really got me thinking differently, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Please visit ironbirddharma.com. Dharma is spelled D-H-A-R-M-A. ironbirddharma.com. Links in the description of the podcast here as well to learn more about Walter, what he has to offer, and more about the system that he's created. So again, hope you really enjoy this conversation, and I'm looking forward to more interviews with Walter. All right, we're live.
All right, cool.
Walter Goodwin, welcome.
Well, Brian, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Enjoy our conversations.
Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to introduce some of this content to our audience here at the Inevitable You. Something a little bit different, but maybe is touched on here and there from stuff that Bill has done or myself. And you've been a dear friend of ours for years now. And I was trying to think when did you first get connected with Bill? And just give us some of your background and kind of how you got into what you're doing now with Iron Bird Dharma.
Cool, thanks. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a good 10 years, probably, at least 10 years since I met Bill to begin with. I had a small software company at the time, and we were wrestling with some issues primarily around partnering with a much larger multi-billion-dollar partner who was trying to not only drive our business, but largely drive us out of business so that they could subsume our technology and make lots of money with it. And so we had some issues around that partnership, and one of my business partners stumbled into Bill and said, I think this guy might be able to help us get a different perspective on things. And she said, and he's willing to come, have a meeting with us for free. And I said, free is great. I'm all for free. So Bill sat down with a few of us that were running the company at the time, and we just got along great right out of the gate. I really liked his take on things, even prior to getting exposure to the model that he had started to build or was building. Just him personally and just how we connected and how we engaged was it was very comfortable, very organic, very free form, and I just liked Bill a lot. And so immediately I was like, yeah, we're going to work with you. And he helped us look into a lot of things. We had a small company at the time. It was growing. He ended up meeting with everybody in the company in groups, engineering team, sales and marketing people, and individually. And he just had a tremendous influence and helped us shift some things around and see some obvious issues that we needed to address. And it was off to the races. And then Bill and I just stayed in touch even after we weren't working together as closely. And, he and I would get together and chat and have coffee and have meals and stuff on a, somewhat regular basis. And I just, I got a lot out of that and just enjoyed our growing friendship.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my first exposure to Bill and Inevitable You and You. And since then, after years and struggles, we managed to get that company acquired.
Mm-hmm.
And which is a whole another crazy long story, but bottom line is it got acquired, and that put me in a whole different profile and a different mode. And subsequently, I've been, working with people that I met along the way, helping them get some startup businesses off the ground. Part of that's good karma, I think, for me, to repay what some of them have done for me. Others just people I believe in and want to help get off the ground. So I've been doing a lot of that. And Iron Bird's kind of a part of that. How Iron Bird came about is partly because of my corporate background and exposure and what I've done with my career, largely in enterprise software for multiple decades, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was a kind of a request on the part of a Tibetan teacher that I studied Buddhist practices with, who essentially asked me to help figure out a way to connect, I guess you could say, Eastern practices
Mm-hmm.
with Western mindsets and goals and needs.
Uh-huh.
And I felt that they were not as divergent as most people might think, or not as different. But it's been a harder process to try to figure out how to tie it all together using the same language.
Yeah.
But the goal for me is to take some of my corporate experience and take many years of meditation training and different awareness practices, I guess I might want to say, and try and fold all that stuff together. Plus, there's a lot of advances happening in the world, period, today. And I guess by those kind of advances, I mean, as technology moves forward, and not just pure technology, but technology thought, I guess I would say,
Uh-huh.
or as quantum physics and other kind of, weird esoteric things start to make progress, they start to sound very much like Eastern esoteric practices and things and insights.
Like
and
science is stumbling upon things that maybe Eastern philosophies have known for thousands of years, kind of thing.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And the difference, though, from my perspective, is just that, the advantage of science is they prove things until they can prove something better. And that gives all of us a bit of credibility, as opposed to Eastern mysticism. You got to take somebody's word for it, or they got to do some kind of miracle. They got to turn water into wine, or walk on the damn water, or do something. Then I'll believe, what you're saying. A lot
of it's more based on subjective experience, not necessarily objective, data or things that are science is attempting to prove through experimentation and things like that.
Absolutely right. Absolutely, that bingo. So I think historically, I mean, I personally believe that mystics through the ages have had very profound experiences which were real. These were not hallucinations or misapperceptions of reality or something like that. But you hit the nail on the head. If they can't somehow help you have your own subjective experience where you go, oh, holy shit, wait a second, this is real. What's going on? I'm having kind of a shift in my own consciousness. If they can't help you have that experience, then you're just left sitting there thinking, well, I don't know what to think. I mean, he seemed like a nice guy, but I don't know. And that's where, science these days, only in maybe the past 50, 100 years, has come along and said, well, how can we, especially bleeding edge things like with quantum physics, how can we view the universe with a less blinders on and a broader lens. And so I think that they work hand in hand. And for me, it's a great convergence, and the convergence is between Eastern mysticism and thought and Western science. They're coming together. They really are. Yeah. And also a convergence in my life, and what I try to do with Iron Bird Dharma is a convergence between what may have been called your spiritual practice, for lack of a better term, or your whatever one does when one meditates or begs for help from God or anybody else, like, yeah, my life sucks, what do I do? But I think there's also a convergence between Eastern practices, which are designed to lift us up and shift us, and the lives we lead as Westerners. We're pretty much all responsible for our own well-being when it comes to putting a roof over our heads and food on the table and all that stuff. There's not a lot of handouts, in the East, you want to practice spiritual stuff, you go into a monastery and people feed you, and then you sit around doing your prayers. And, I guess that used to be the case more in the West with Christian monks and all that stuff too. But in America today, in this modern world, we're all on our own, sink or swim, get your career together, make some progress, make your life work. And so I really feel like this convergence of Eastern thought and Western science, and Eastern practices and Western needs, and what we're hoping to form our lives into, it's all kind of converging together. And they should all, I spent a lot of my life feeling that much of this was bifurcated, well, I had my meditation practice kind of, and my Buddhist practices, and then I had my career needs and my company's needs, but over time I came to kind of see, like, no, it's all kind of the same. Like if you're working on yourself and improving your profile, it should spill into all these corners of your life. And so, again, based on my multiple teachers saying, live a Western lifestyle, but incorporate Eastern practices to cause your Western life to be successful, which is what we all kind of want anyway. Nobody wants to just go through the motions and not grow, not succeed, not get raises, not get promotions. We all want to grow in the process and make our lives better. And so the question is, can you factor in, I don't know, I want to say like ancient proven techniques, which are orchestrated to lift you up, and can you fold that into your life? And so that's what, so I don't know, that's where Iron Bird kind of fits in for me, is like, is there a way to look at many of these practices and techniques that I've been exposed to over many, many years in my life, and tried to figure out how to integrate into the rest of my life and how to bring those things together? Is there a way to kind of turn that into a model which helps people, do their lives, whatever their lives might be, whatever your career situation is, whatever your goals are, whatever your family situation is? You don't have to be any different than who you are. You just need to know what you want to succeed at and what matters to you. And then you try and fold in the proper approaches to success. And that's no different than what Inc. magazine is trying to
Right.
tell you to do when you get your emails from them regularly. We're all pop psychology. Everybody's trying to figure out how to improve our lives, and so I'm just taking a particular tangent on that comes from my experience.
Yeah, makes sense. And putting it in a frame and in the language that more of the Western mind can interpret and understand better is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I think that's viable. It's totally doable.
Yeah.
And it makes it much more approachable. And the point is to be able to adopt things that help you. And if it's very foreign to you, or if you're not going to go, live in a monastery or a cave or something for 40 years, you got shit to do, then
Yeah.
you want it to make sense and be clear and be expressed in terms that resonate with you. So that's what I'm trying to figure out how to kind of translate, if you will, or reframe in more Western terms, and in terms that kind of meet, what I think are people's more average day-to-day experience than maybe even I was, when I was plugging along with this stuff.
And is this about understanding yourself differently, understanding the world or the universe, the workings of the universe differently? Is it all of the above? Like how do you go about attaining that, and improving, giving people a system to really improve their lives in ways that maybe they haven't tried or done before? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And it probably is a D, all of the above, if not E, F, G, and H, all of the above. Incorporates everything. I think, how would I take a step back to answer that? I mean, back to what I was saying a minute ago, if you ask people some really silly, basic questions like, would you rather be more successful or less successful? Most people would say more. Would you rather have your life be clearer or more confusing? Well, clearer. Would you rather kind of have access to more energy or be exhausted? Well, you start answering those kind of questions, and I think we would pretty much all agree on the answers to those questions. Then the next step is, well, what if we could reframe everything in a way that helps you do that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think people would say, well, that's a big if, but if you could do that, sure, I'd be inclined to do that. And so then it starts getting a little bit into the nitty gritty, or a little bit into the reframing. And so I think I don't know if it was A or B or C above, but one of the things you hit on was like, do you look at the universe differently? And I would say you look at your life, you look at yourself, you look at your life, you look at your relationships, you look at your career, you look at the pressures of your life, and you look at the universe differently. And that's another, it's another one of those moments of like, okay, well, that sounds great in theory, but how do you do that? And if I had to oversimplify, which I will for the purposes of this chat, I would just say one thing that I am always led back to is that the scientists, the physicists all say that everything is energy.
Mm-hmm.
And, even matter is energy. And we're comprised of energy. And, our neural connections in our brains, although they're chemical, they're also energy connections. Either a neuron fires and sends a signal, or it doesn't. That's an energetic kind of basis. But if you start to, and this is maybe another leap, but if you start to look, if you can allow yourself to reframe everything, which is a lot, everything. It's big. But if you could reframe everything and say, what if I'm going to look at the universe through an energetic lens? As opposed to, let's say, what we all mostly do, which is our sensory perceptions, our emotions, our fears, our desires, those are in goals kind of count, but those are the lenses I think we mostly look through.
Right.
It's how we interact with the universe is largely through our perceptions, but also the emotions that are generated from those perceptions too. And then we start making decisions based on, as the Buddhists would say, desires and aversions. Give me more of what I like, give me less of what I don't like.
Pain and pleasure, right?
Pain and pleasure. And we're just kind of going through life, kind of looking at pain and pleasure, as opposed to, I think, possibly going through life kind of going, well, the universe is comprised of energy, and I'm part of the universe. I guess I'm comprised of energy. All of my relationships are energetic ones. Even my desires and aversions and fears are energetic in nature too. So and so one of my, I guess, big premises is, well, first there's that everything's energetic, and then the next thing is, if you can believe that momentarily and assume that that's true, the next thing is, well, what are the implications of that on me? And what I would say is, as you start to look at life in terms of energy exchanges, and an energetic environment that surrounds you, and energy impinging on your thoughts, and now we make the leap, your consciousness, then you can start to say, well, is this addressable? Is there something I can do about this? I mean, I live in an energized world. I have lots of energy flying around in my career, in my relationships with my family, with my loved ones, with friends, whatever, with the people trying to screw me out of business or whatever, like the list goes on.
You're gaining and expending energy in various ways, right? Yeah.
And are you doing that efficiently to your advantage?
Yeah.
Because I would argue the sensorial perception model and the desire aversion model don't always cause you to manage your energies most efficiently.
Right.
What if you desire this person that you want to have a relationship, and they don't desire you back? You could put a ton of energy into that pursuit. We see that on movies and TV shows in our own lives regularly, So that's a silly but a very good, I think, straightforward example of, we've all had experiences where we put too much energy into a person or a situation,
right?
And if we were more aware of where we judiciously expend energy for our ultimate advantage, we would maybe start to make slightly different choices.
Right.
And then what I argue, and I think that the Eastern mystics kind of all do, and probably a lot of Westerners too, but that energetic management affects your mind. It affects your consciousness. It affects the amount of energy you have in you. We've all had days where we're just wired for no reason. It feels good. And we've had days where we're just beat to shit by the end of the day, and it doesn't feel so good, and we can barely drag our asses to bed, Right. And so what if we were managing that all better and more efficiently? What effect would it have on our bodies? What effect would it have on our moods? What effect would it have on the energy that we could share with other people, the energy we could put into our own endeavors? And also, very importantly, what effect would it have on your mental acuity and your mental clarity and your insights and your decisions and your conscious awareness? I mean, we make 1,000 decisions a day, and that
largely unconsciously, right?
Largely unconsciously, and largely they're binary, kind of like, well, should I go to the store now or later? Well, from my vantage point, that decision is an important one.
Yeah.
And it should be based on what energetically serves you best.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a simple example. Well, right now it's rush hour. And by the time I get to the store, I'm going to be furious and exhausted, and it's going to take me twice as long. So that's an easy one. Why don't I wait a little bit and go later? But
Yeah.
there are countless examples like that, right. I think, where we start to kind of go, where's my energy expenditure and what effect is that going to have on my exhaustion levels? But also, what effect is it going to have on my mental clarity? And then I come onto another decision later in the day where I need to be more clear. Well, did I just use all my energy fighting rush hour traffic to get the milk? Right. Or did I make a smart decision about the milk, which left me with more energy and more clarity? And now something popped up at work, or instead of me snapping at my wife or kids, I'm not as stressed. I'm in a different profile because I made a simple dumbass decision about going to get the milk an hour later. Right. Based on that thing alone, that changed my whole energy profile, my whole consciousness profile. And now I'm in a whole different position to be a little more patient, to be a little bit more clear, to respond better to another pressure coming at me, because not everybody else out there is stress-free. Like everybody's dealing with their own stuff. So odds are good that they're going to come at you, whether it's your kids, your spouse, your colleagues, your boss. Odds are good that they're going to come at you because we're all on the verge of losing it all the time. So they're going to come at you, but you could break that cycle for your own immediate benefit. But then also everything is a potential fork in the road. The phone rings and you go, hey, boss, and it could go south or it could go north. And that could largely depend on them, but it could depend on your ability to decide not to get the milk at rush hour. Just that simple. So if you start to extrapolate that out and go, well, how many decisions do we make like that on a daily basis? And can we look at them in terms of my energy profile, which it directly affects my consciousness profile and my clarity? Right. I would argue you can and will get more clear. You can and will get smarter because you're clearer. Yeah. You can be
like you said earlier, it affects everything. Literally everything. And to tie it into a classic inevitable you tool, like towards and away, right? Are you moving towards what you want versus away from what you don't want? So much energy for most people is spent in avoiding pain, avoiding the things we don't want. And then, so what's left to pursue the things we do want, right? We talk so much, the 90%, right, of people primarily focused in an away pattern, avoiding pain. Well, on your very best day, you just get less pain. You don't get more of the things that we label as pleasure. We're not focused in we don't dedicate and focus our energy in that towards pattern of pursuing the things that'll bring more pleasure and success, all the great things that we're wanting. Like you said, better relationships, more money, success in business, all of that, greater health, right? Like, so I like that. It's an interesting and different way to think about how, the classic tools that we teach and, give clients, reframing it, thinking it from a different lens, an energetic lens. And that really is a leap, it is a leap of consciousness, because back to an earlier point you said, I think, we wake up, we get out of bed, we're, take our shower, we're already in this three-dimensional Newtonian physics, classical model of the world, which serves us or has served us well, right? It's served the animal kingdom well. We're just trying to survive. And now we're being presented with information. Well, there's another level of consciousness that goes even beyond that, to where when you look at the world as energy instead of just cause and effect, or there's me and then there's that tree over there, there's that like separation, I think, too, for a lot of people in their consciousness, that we keep locked into that old paradigm of what I'm calling, I guess, the classical or materialistic or three-dimensional kind of world versus this next level of consciousness, I guess.
Yeah, well put. I mean, I think that Newtonian physics serves us well and has, and sensory perceptions make you hear and smell and see threats, so
Yeah.
those things, they all serve us, but as we maybe evolve, if in fact we're evolving as people and societies, and what is it, what was his name, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He's kind of like, if somebody puts a pillow over your face, you have an immediate need.
Right, right.
And that is not to be self-actualized. That is to breathe. And then if they take the pillow off, but they don't give you water, you have a different immediate need. And you work your way up through this pyramid. And I think that's a pyramid of needs and consciousness. And as we get our needs met and we kind of move up, we're in a whole different profile. And I think I'm not that well versed in the inevitable you stuff, but of course, the towards and away stuff makes a big difference. That's really huge.
For
And
sure.
then I think what I would say, perhaps you could correct me or we could discuss this some other time, where I think some of the inevitable you stuff and Iron Bird stuff converges is like, well, I would agree towards is better than away. And then the question to me is towards what? Like, is it towards fulfilling your desires, or is it towards becoming more aware and more conscious, which helps you make better towards choices? So
Yeah.
it's a refinement of your towards choices,
Right.
based on a refinement of your perceptive skills or your consciousness, or as you move towards one goal, maybe you supplant that goal with a higher goal or a different goal. And so you constantly have that towards mechanism moving forward. And I would say an upward. You're moving forward in your life, but you're hopefully moving upward in your perceptive skills and upward in the consciousness with which you engage with life and perceive life and continue to make choices with. But it doesn't push away or supplant the 3D world, because you still want to be able to look both ways before you step off the curb
Right.
get hit by a bus, because you could be, you could have consciousness through the roof and the bus will take you out. So you got to be grounded and in your life and in this physical world, but you got to be also, I think, for us kind of seekers, if you will, you got to be grounded in this world, but you got to also not be restricted by this world. And that's where different
allow yourself to transcend maybe that old world, or
it at least for periods of time. And I think that those periods of time ultimately serve you in your grounding too. It's kind of like we pause to sleep, we pause to eat, we pause and take a vacation. So I think that there's vacations of consciousness, like we're all plugged into our daily lives and our stresses so much. So if you can have some good mindfulness techniques to use while you're at work, or you can have some meditation techniques which you use to recharge you. It's just like, we don't think twice about sleeping. We'd think twice about it if we weren't. If sleep deprivation or something, you don't sleep enough, you're not at your best. You don't eat well, you're not at your best. So I think similarly, if we did those things well, which we've been kind of schooled in, but now if we start applying some consciousness practices and techniques, it's just like going from 100% fast food diet to eating organic fruits and vegetables or something. Like there's an effect on you. It's going from too little sleep and too much coffee or whatever to healthy, to no exercise, to some exercise. Like we would all argue those things uplift us. They put us in a better profile. So I'm just saying, on top of those things, you can't supplant them, you can't push them away. But on top of those things are other things that can infuse energy into you and can lift your clarity of your awareness up. And they give you the advantage. Right. They give you the advantage in terms of your own immediate happiness and gratification and clarity, which is sometimes enough, but they also give you the advantage in terms of, you're making the right choices in your life. Maybe this person's not right for you, and you finally see that. Or maybe this is the best way for me to manage my boss.
Yeah.
To my advantage, to rising up the ladder, in my career, and if you can see those things more clearly, then you make better choices. And I think we would all have to say, you make better choices, you get better results. And then there are consequences to everything. So imagine if all your choices started to get to be better. And clearer, and more empowered and more energized. Then over time, you start to see the consequences of that. It doesn't happen the next day, but nothing does. College education doesn't happen the next day, but a degree might get you somewhere. So it's like I sometimes just relate it to training for the Olympics or other high-end sports stuff. You got to put the time in. But if you believe you've got a baseline of talent and somebody else tells you've got a baseline of talent, then you put the time in and you improve and you improve and you improve. And then over some period of time, there's consequences to all that focused effort. And life is different, a day at a time. But at some point, that you take off in a different trajectory through that effort, through that conscious engaging of your focused mind, and you end up in a different place simply because of that effort.
Love it. Yeah. And this is making me think of a previous conversation we had about, I think most people, a lot of us are good at, we've checked all the things off on our list, right? We, got our college degree, we got the good job, we have our family, we have this classical model of success, or we've attained the things that we've met our basic needs. And then I think a lot of people are left in this place of, well, now what, and as we talked last time, not to bash on any religion or Christianity, but one of the messages or programs that's put in as well, that's awaiting you in the next lifetime, right? Or after this life, and in the afterlife, then you can have it. So I think a lot of people are left waiting, like, well, I've got everything, and now what, And so if you could talk a little bit about that, I guess, of like what's awaiting, or what's that kind of next level, or this raising of consciousness, and what it does and what it brings.
Now we're getting into the meat of things, but well, I certainly can't speak for Christianity, and I can't even speak for Buddhism, even though I've been studying it for like 40 years. And there's a lot of Buddhists that would tell me I probably don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not a scholar. But I think, the thing that popped in my head when you brought up Christianity just now was, and you said there's a kind of what's built into it, and maybe many Christians would disagree with this too, but there certainly is this notion of heaven, and this notion of, at some point you'll be in a different profile. You'll be dead, and your soul will be there, and it will be all perfect and whatever. Grandma will be there again, and whatever else people think of heaven, but at the same time, I don't know if this was a quote from Christ or somebody else. I think it might have been Christ who said, "The kingdom of God is within you."
Yes.
He said that.
Yeah.
So if you believe in that guy, and I think he was pretty awesome, but if you believe in that guy and you believe what he verbatim said, I mean, of course it was translated 3 different ways and times or whatever, but that's what I would argue the difference is.
Yeah.
I believe that heaven is a state of mind. I don't think it's a physical place. It might be a place, but I think it might be a mental place that people get to after they die or whatever. But if you take what Christ said verbatim, the kingdom of God is within you, then I would say, and I happen to believe that. So what I would say is it's all consciousness. It's all in your experience. It's all in your mind. It's all, we are weighed down by this heavy 3D world, which ironically, is energy, but it sure feels solid and heavy to us. But we
Right.
are weighed down by our
Well, it's
emotions.
more rooted in the physical world, not as much as the ethereal or
Exactly.
yeah.
But yet we would all acknowledge the ethereal world exists. We all touch it occasionally or more if we're lucky. Some people maybe are holding off to escape the physical world at death and end up in a better place.
Mhm.
But what I would argue, and I think largely, Buddhists would maybe say, is that it's touchable. It's approachable and it's connectable, or some other able words.
Yeah.
It's you can immerse yourself in those more esoteric states of mind and consciousness and attention, and you still got to pay attention to your body, you still got to feed it, you still got to sleep, you got to do all that, but you don't have to always be trapped by it, and you can start to experience more ineffable, more esoteric states of mind and consciousness through managing your life in a different way, more efficient way,
Yeah.
through adding practices. Prayer is good, meditation is good, taking a hike on a nice hiking trail on a beautiful day is good. All of these things wash a lot of the heaviness out of us, wash maybe some of our fears and anxieties and stresses, and then from there, where can you go? And so
Yeah.
I would say, uh, I would say that there are tiers of awareness or tiers of reality. If we look around the world, we all kind of agree, well, that's a house and that's a tree and that's a dog. But beyond that, well, what am I feeling about the tree? Or what is the dog going to bite me? Or is the dog wagging his tail? Like we're all perceiving the same things on kind of slightly different levels, and we're registering that, and we're incorporating that feedback in. And I guess I would just argue that I don't know, sometimes I think of it in terms of the ocean. In certain places, the ocean is very deep, and the kind of creatures that inhabit it at different levels are very different. It's the same ocean, but they're different, and their experience of the ocean is very different. And so we're experiencing the world this way. But if we can lift ourselves up emotionally, energetically, consciously, however else you want to describe it, but if we can engage in practices which lift us up, which remove some of the tethers that hold us down, and we can do that through engaged practices, whether it's prayer, meditation, yoga, hiking, whatever, going to the gym, but you do that with a conscious effort to purge toxins, let go of some of the tethers, and lift yourself up. I mean, it's the holiday season as we're recording this. Do something nice for somebody, for God's sake. That puts a smile on people's faces, to be of service and to help someone that's less fortunate. That lifts you up. What if we did shit like that regularly? How lifted could we get? And then the world you live in is a different world than the one you used to live in.
Right. Things like compassion and gratitude and giving and all those feel good, lighter emotions and actions and things. Yeah, it becomes an entirely different reality than maybe some of the more.
Those are perfect examples, I think. I think, and maybe this is me, so I'll just speak to me. But I kind of feel like, and I was trained a certain way. I don't think it was that foreign to other Americans, for example, but like, I do good things for people. I help people. And then at a certain point I go, well, I don't know. I did like those 3 things yesterday. Isn't that enough? Like I'm going to start to judge myself on this very binary kind of black-white scale.
Right.
Like, okay, based on what I did yesterday, am I headed to heaven or am I headed to hell?
Yeah.
I think I'm score. Keeping score. So the question is, am I good enough? And the answer often, unfortunately, is, yeah, I think I'm good enough. I'm getting a solid like C plus B minus on
Yeah.
life. I'm not at risk of failing.
Uh-huh.
So do I need to shoot for anything else? I'm passing.
Yeah.
It's pass fail.
Or,
This is
or is
heaven or hell. This
yeah.
is a pass fail scenario.
Or
Whereas
the classic example Bill would use is, isn't good enough?
that's exactly it. And my response to that is, of course not, because you're not in a pass fail system.
Right.
That's what we've been given. We've been given a pass fail system. And as long as you can pass, it's good enough. You don't need to do anything else for anybody else because you're already passing. You're already a good enough person. But see, what I would argue is, what if it wasn't a pass fail system? What if it was every time you add a point, everything changes? You go, so passing is what, 70%? You don't get an F, 69, you get an F. You could hover at 70%, but would your life be different if you're at 75%, 80%, 95%? Right, what if you got to whatever the fuck 120% might be, like 120% of the average human? See, I would argue that's absolutely feasible because average humans are living their lives in average ways, and they're being very inefficient about their energy. They're not making the best, clearest decisions on a regular basis. So they're hovering at 80%, or maybe they're 100%. But if you put a different plan in place, if you, instead of having this binary, am I failing or passing system, am I going to go to heaven or hell? If you start to say, there's no limits to the consciousness that I can perceive, then you go, did I do enough by doing those three things yesterday? Is good enough? The answer is always no. That's not enough. It's, I mean, not to the point where you make yourself insane, obviously, or you hate yourself for not doing more and more and more and more. But the premise is, there's no end to the good you can do, or should maybe. There's no end to the karmic repercussions of that for you and for them. There's no end to the uplifting and consciousness that can happen. You just keep doing it. And so tying a bow around that, I would say that's what separates normal humans from mystics or sages or adepts or whatever, is, whether it's a Christian saint or whether it's
or angels or gods, or however you want to think about that, right? Other entities, beings, different levels of existence, right?
That's it. That's the difference. Is they just kept going, is this the limit? What if I did this? Oh, wait a minute, I just took it up a notch. And they just keep taking it up a notch, whether they do it through their relationship with Christ, or whether they do it through their ascetic yoga practices, or whether they do it through their meditation techniques in monasteries or whatever. Or in our case, what we're trying to figure out is, how do you do it as people with jobs and people with families and whatever? But, can you keep lifting your, I think Don Juan in the Castaneda books calls it your state of attention. And the premise is there's no limits. There's no limits, but humans are limited because we live human lives, and we go, I did enough yesterday, so I don't have to do any today. And then guess what? You don't break through. But if you had this non-binary, everything helps. Every bit of effort focused in the right way lifts you into a higher frame. Then you realize there's no upper limit. There's no ceiling on this when it comes to your clarity, your consciousness, your awareness. And you're absolutely right. We could say saints on this planet, but if you believe that vibration and frequency and consciousness is what puts you in different dimensions, then you could be an angel. You could be an Eastern deity or something. I mean, who are those guys other than beings which have
with elevated consciousness?
That's exactly it. That's precisely it. Period.
Well, and again, to tie it back to where we started this, even science is substantiating that it is infinite. It is multidimensional. It is, it could be infinite dimensions of reality, right? Where and just to nerd out a little bit, I always like to muse on the fact that if it is infinite, if it is infinite, let's say the universe, then at any point in time, I must be the center of the universe. You're the center of the universe. And if it's all connected, like we're all living our own universes, we're all creating our own realities. So yeah, why not want more or see how much more I can have, whether that's just more love, compassion, all those great things. But what if there's like superpowers? What if I can, instant manifestation? What if I can, telepathically, like I believe all those things are accessible, and we just haven't been trained, most of us, I think, haven't really been given a system to really explore those possibilities, or even believe that is real, like,
Right. I 100% agree with you. It's all accessible, and it's all, not to pick on anybody in particular, but yeah, we, in this world, let's just blame the entire planet and humanity, but we haven't been given the tools to do that necessarily, or we haven't framed it in the way that all those things are real and viable and possible. And looping back around to where you started, science is starting to prove the viability of some of these things. And so for those of us that like when science validates things, we can now say, well, science is suggesting that, this and this and this is true. And then that gives you that credence, and all that gives you kind of encourages you to go, well, maybe I will experiment with how I can reframe my experience here.
Yeah.
And it's not as limited as I might have been led to believe.
Yeah.
Now, I think I don't know, not to beat a dead horse, but I think it is as limited, and it's not nearly as limited. And the difference is, if you're given this model of engaging with the world, then you won't break out of it. Then you won't see that this exists.
Right.
But and I think that's what people like you and Bill, and what I'm suggesting, and scientists are suggesting, and the mystics have always suggested, but most people didn't want to believe them or follow their practices. But I think what we're all recognizing is it is mutable, it is changeable, it's impactable and affectable. That, if you're given this model, then this is the world, this is the lens you'll see the world through, and that's 100% real.
Yeah.
Because it's constrained. But if you start to live your life in a different framework, if you reframe the whole experience based on what science is telling us and all those things, then all of a sudden your experience, I guarantee you, because I've experienced it myself, your experience changes as a function of the reframing and how you're engaging with your life differently. You know, I mean, if you're just, I don't know, what's a silly example, but if you're in a bad mood, you stub your toe and kick the dog, and then you're driving around town, you're just like Mr. Magoo going, Roadhogs, and you're going in the store and you're grumpy to the people working in the store, and you're like pissed at the guy that took your parking space. And that's real. That's your life. But if you start to reframe how you engage, and you start to look at things from an energetic expenditure and a consciousness elevation or decline, then you can kind of go, well, why am I fighting with this guy over a parking place?
Yeah.
That's just going to take a lot of my time and energy. No, hell with them. Have the parking place, bro. Here.
Yeah.
It's all yours. I'll find one somewhere, even if I have
or
to
that energy could have been dedicated towards manifesting the front row parking space.
Exactly. And that's what more energy does. I mean, I think that's what manifesting is about. But people don't realize how much we all fritter away our energy in all these exchanges. Our energy gets frittered away, so it's capped. It's kept capped. But if you start managing things better, like you say, then you got this more energy, and guess what? Suddenly you manifest the space in the front, or any number of other things, completely unrelated things manifest, and so
things that you didn't even really expect or were thinking of. It's like the universe or the system delivers it to you just because you're on that vibrational frequency. It's like, I know personally, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. Like, if I'm in a bad mood, man, things just get worse. If I don't like do something to get myself out, it's like a bad day turns to a worse day, turns like to the worst day. Like it's just one thing after another versus days where I'm like, man, I'm with it. I'm aware, acute, like I'm feeling great. It's like things pile or stack on top of each other on the positive. It's like front row parking space, or a free meal at Chipotle, or like, it's like gifts are just like, they just come with more momentum and frequency.
Yep. I think that I do kind of think that's how it works.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big I'm not well versed in the law of attraction or the secret or any of that stuff either. I think some of the ways they approach things is a little bit fishy to me.
Yeah, agreed.
But I do believe, back to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you just said about, kind of like you being the center of your universe, me being the center of my universe.
Yeah.
From a certain quantum physics or advanced physics perspective, we are all creating our universe and experience as we go.
Right.
And a lot of people like Dolores Cannon and a lot of these other Western mystic type folks will say exactly that.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how can that be if you're creating your universe and I'm creating my universe, and yet I'm still not getting a new car, and yet you're still being an asshole, and or whatever, how can it all work? I don't know. But what I do know is that I think that there's some truth to that I can create my universe, and it may not be I manifest a car with a big red bow on it for Christmas, but it may be that I manifest opportunities out of my consciousness, or that I manifest clarity, or I manifest a higher state of mind, which leads to better things. And that is, for me, indisputable. We are all capable at any given moment of manifesting more clarity and more awareness and a higher state of awareness or consciousness or attention. Choose your word. But to me, that's the game. That's the game. And out of that enhanced clarity and uplifted consciousness, which is not disputable in my world, out of that comes manifest destiny. May or may not be a new Mercedes Benz, but it will be experiences or interactions or situations that you wouldn't have run into otherwise. If you end up getting in a fist fight with the guy in the Safeway parking lot over the parking spot, that whatever else you might have had in store for you that day isn't going to happen when you're hauled off and charged with assault and battery or something. So
your universe branches off this way instead of that way, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. That's it. And sometimes, maybe I'm just a simpleton, but I like these silly, dumb examples. Well, like, I'm not going to punch some guy in the nose in the Safeway parking lot, but but that's just a kind of a coarse example that shows you how our universes branch.
Or maybe it's just a simple.
That's it. And then something else consequently comes from that. And so I believe we are constantly branching, constantly making choices in consciousness, and that branching takes us where it takes us. And if you start to reframe your life in terms of what is my role in all this, what are my decisions doing in all this, what forks am I taking in the road, because the universe's job is to kind of put forks in the road, I believe. This is like a big Star Trek II hologram. This is all manifest for us to have branching opportunities, to learn lessons, to lift our consciousness up, to finally make that same mistake for the last time, and see where life takes us now that we've learned that lesson. And so we're constantly branching and constantly making choices and constantly dealing with whatever scenarios are provided us, which some people might say is random and other people would say is generated.
Yeah.
It's generated by the holodeck
Yeah.
based on where you're at, what you need to experience, what choices you've failed to make over and over and over again. They'll keep coming back until you learn the lesson and you take the different branch this time for the first time, and then your life is completely different from that,
Right.
from that
Yeah.
point forward.
And I find that just massively empowering. I think it could feel daunting to some folks, but to me, it's like, how exciting is that to be like, to know that if you believe that it's a system and it's all conscious, the universe is conscious, you're conscious, you're interacting always with the system. There's something that Bill said that has always stuck with me, and it was something around the lines like, the system wants to interact with you at higher and higher ways, like in more beautiful ways than even you can imagine. Like it wants that, because as your consciousness grows, it's the whole consciousness expands. And so like it wants more better things for you. And like, why wouldn't you just want that personally? And so I find it very exciting and empowering. And I think it's a great place to start. Like a journey of personal, growth and transformation is like, what is possible? Like, how high can I go?
I don't think there's any limits, to be honest. And
Yeah.
I think it is really empowering. And some days, to your point, it is daunting. Some days it's daunting. Honestly, I forget who the quote's from. I think it might have been Marianne Williamson or somebody who ran for president, I think, last time. She said something about, our greatest fear is not how powerless we are, but how powerful we are.
Yeah.
Something like that, paraphrasing. Because, as you're kind of saying, well, what if we adopted that premise that it's all empowering, and the universe is always just waiting for us, encouraging us, or hoping that we make a good choice and it lifts us up into the next set of choices, then, I'll just whisper it because people don't want to hear it, but then the responsibility is entirely on you.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Yeah.
It's all about your choices and your karma, and it's all about taking responsibility for those choices and taking a risk, and trying, giving a shot. That's where I'm kind of at sometimes, is like, well, who knows where you're at, who knows where I'm at, but we're all where we're at. And at that precise point, you've got a fork in the road.
Yeah. Well, and to feel great about it, to tie it back to one of your earlier points, you can always hang your hat on that. It's not about pass or fail. Like, you can't get it wrong, right? It's you're already passing. It's just, where do you want to go?
That's it. Yeah, that's precisely it. Where do you want to go? There's a Western woman who's a Tibetan Buddhist nun called Pema Chodron, and what she says is, start where you are, and that's for everybody.
Yeah.
And that presumes that kind of responsibility, and it presumes that kind of opportunity. Wherever you are, you can make choices. You can make healthier choices, and I say that physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, consciously, energetically. We can all just reframe it from this perspective of healthier choices in consciousness and energy, and just apply them to our lives. There's so many countless examples of things we could be doing worse, and we wouldn't, although this time of year I have had too many sweets and too much cake and stuff. But I also know if I did that all year long, man, what a disaster that would be. So I would not do that. Or, the list goes on. We might consume too much on New Year's Eve, but we probably couldn't get away with doing that every night, or shouldn't. So same thing with consciousness, and energy. You got to start making a little bit more precise choices, and recognize that nobody's going to make the choices for you. For the most part, people aren't going to force you to make either the right or the wrong choice. I mean, we're young, we have parents, we have demands and pressures as we mature, etc. But still, there are choices in consciousness, and the classic kind of sound bites of like, you may not be able to choose everything that comes your way, but you can always choose your reaction to it. Those are reactions in consciousness as well.
Yeah.
And all of that has an effect on your energy. All of that has an effect on your consciousness. And every one of those forks in the road, instead of left and right, which is how we usually think of forks in the road, I tend to think of them as up and down in terms of your consciousness.
Yeah.
So you just, as life comes at you, you start making decisions, but you reframe it from a perspective of like, not what fulfills my immediate desire, or that's probably a good thing for me, but I'm kind of afraid to do it. You kind of go, well, what's the right thing to do? Based on my energy profile, based on my consciousness. If you can believe, and if you can presume up front that your consciousness can be affected by your choices, and then guess what? It's all on you. It's all on you to make better choices, to treat your energy and your consciousness the same way you treat your sleep patterns, your exercise patterns, your food intake patterns, how you engage at work, etc. It's just another layer, but the implications or the possibilities that are contained within that layer of decisions, it's profound.
Yeah.
Nothing
Agreed.
shy of that.
And again, massively empowering, I think. And it automatically, if you adopt that belief, if you see it that way, you're never a victim. It's always a choice. And it's, as Bill, one of his initial tools, or one of the things we first give clients is, this notion of life's a journey. Well, yeah, but it's also a trajectory, right? Like, are you accelerating this way, and it's ebbing and flowing, but like, where is your trajectory?
Yeah, we're 100% on the same page with that. I believe that fully. And I believe what you just said too, that a lot of bad things happen to good people, and bad things happen to bad people too. But yeah, it's easy to adopt a little bit of a victim consciousness, in this world, because there's a lot of shit that comes flying at us over the course of a lifetime. And it's easy to kind of go, shit, man, I've had a run of bad luck, or why does that shit always happen to me, or whatever. And then you get into that victim mode. But I would argue that's not productive, it's not healthy, and it's not particularly accurate. Like, shit comes your way, but maybe that's an opportunity. Maybe that's an opportunity for you to figure something out, or for you to engage in those kind of situations differently, or cut someone out of your life, or change and get a different job, or whatever is the right thing to do to improve your life. But instead of like, how come I always end up in jobs where the boss is a dickhead? Well, I don't know, maybe is your career, is your education level, I mean, what is preventing you from how are you being held captive in that situation? And what can you change, taking responsibility and not being a victim, to put yourself on a different trajectory, into a different profile where that happens less, if at all. And that's it. It's no more victim mentality,
and that's where the art of reframing comes in. What we spend so much time with clients is, how can you reframe, the worst thing that happened to you to the best thing, that this was influential, this was important for me in my soul's journey for some kind of growth and lesson and trajectory upwards. Like the classic example, maybe getting fired was the universe's way of leading you to the better thing, like that wasn't the right place for you, or your boss was a dick, and there's better people, better bosses waiting for you in the next opportunity.
Exactly it.
Get it anyway. It's however
I use the same term, reframing, and I'm a big believer in that. You have to know how to analyze how you're currently framing something, and you have to be given some tools to reframe in a different way. But you can, once you've got those tools, and if you allow yourself to kind of go, oh, I have been just looking at it the same way over and over again, and now I want to kind of open my blinders up a little bit, or I want to stop looking at it this way and start looking at it this way. And if you've got enough tools to help you for you to work with, to help you reframe things, then it's a whole different scenario. And also, yet again, looping back around, it's a situation that you accept ownership of, and you're not victimized by the situation, but you're saying, how do I reframe this? And that's a really great place to start always. Like, this situation keeps occurring, or I feel trapped. I feel like there's no way out of this. Well, how do I reframe this so that I behave differently, even if they're not gonna? I change my behavior that gets me out of this situation, and can I reframe it so that I've got a different set of behavioral skills or whatever or just behaviors to get out of this. And then all of a sudden I am out of it, because I've reframed it into, this is something I need to take ownership of and address, even though they seem to be doing things to me. But just sitting there and being in that victim, there's no reframing there. There's no change. There's no finding a way out. It's like a puzzle or something, it's like a maze. Don't they have those mazes, or like pumpkin mazes or like that, like you gotta, it's your damn maze. Like, maybe there's some people that help you along the way, but if you just stand there in the middle and cry, that's it. It's the end of it. You're stuck there. You gotta say, there is a way out of this, and it's on me.
Well, and I believe that what you're creating, what you're onto, what you can provide folks will certainly help them along that maze. As always, I could go for hours down this discussion with you, Walter, but for the sake of our listeners, I did want to get into some, actually specifics around, practices and techniques, but maybe we can reserve that for our next podcast, and or people can reach out to you for more information, or well, I think that would, having those follow-up podcasts with you makes a lot of sense. I'd love to do that and just kind of roll our sleeves up and get into some of the nitty-gritty. If we're starting with these presumptions that consciousness is shiftable, and and our lives are more moldable despite whatever outside pressures we have. So then the next step is, well, what do we do to change our clarity and our energy levels and our perceptive skills, and lift our awareness up and our consciousness up? And I'll just tease by saying, I kind of put things in two major buckets, and that's, where do we lose energy? And where can we gain energy? And energy being completely related to consciousness. You lose energy, your consciousness drops. You gain energy, your consciousness is uplifted. And so there's situations that we all find ourselves in which take us out, kind of. And there's situations and techniques and tools that we can put ourselves into which are uplifting, and that, over the long haul, have desired consequences, so maybe in some of our next conversations we'll dive into some of that stuff. That'd be awesome. I know I personally am very interested, and especially some of the meditation practices and other techniques. Again, I see how inevitable you and what your knowledge, what all the experience that you've gained over the years, how it dovetails nicely for this ultimate goal of just improving people's lives. So well, it feels, from our conversations and from what I know about Inevitable You and the experiences I had with Bill, I think it does dovetail nicely. And I think it's all in the framing, and it's in the tools and techniques, which you guys certainly have plenty of too. And I think it's very easy to look at all the wonderful things that Inevitable You offers from just this reframed vantage point of,
energy and consciousness.
Yeah.
And like you said, all of that results in happier lives, better lives, more success, the things you feel are important to you. And that's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So right on.
Well, where can folks reach out to you? And
well, if people really want to reach out to me, I have a website, which is kind of under revision, but you'll get a little bit of a flavor of me anyway, which is Iron Bird Dharma, Dharma spelled DHARMA.com.
And I'll provide a link in your information as well in the podcast.
Great. And then there's a contact page there, but there's also an email address, which is wings, which I believe is with an S, WINGS, at ironbirddharma.com. And that's how we could make some first contact and connections and see where things might be able to go from there.
Awesome. Well, this is interesting as always. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Always fun. I enjoy your questions and your enthusiasm, and we always end up in interesting places. So I'm glad we're capturing this.
Yeah. Awesome.
My pleasure. Thanks, Brian.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. Take care.